Joining us now, we have member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. And Senator, it's great to have you on the show. I'd like to start right there, especially with Mainers and the vaccine. How is your state faring in terms of getting people vaccinated?
We're doing pretty well. I don't have the exact figure, Mika, but I think it's approaching 70%. In the 60-70% range. I think we're doing very well. And as Joe said, that's what's really enabled the economy to wake up. And people they want to get out. They want to go to the store. They want to go to restaurants. And the vaccinations have really helped that. And I got to tell you, we had the guidance the other day from the CDC about remasking because of the danger of even people who are vaccinated not necessarily getting sick, but carrying the virus and spreading it to others. And everybody I talked to around here in the last couple of days, and these are, people that manage these buildings and just work in the area, are pretty irritated at the people who aren't getting vaccinated and are basically prolonging the pandemic. I mean, it just, come on. We've now had 200 million people have the vaccine, no serious side effects, except not getting sick. And as I say, Maine is doing well. Our businesses are all up. People are coming to the state as they do because it's one of the most wonderful places in the country in the summertime, as you well know. And so I think we're doing fine. But we've got to worry about some of those people bringing the Delta variant back in with them because they haven't been vaccinated.
So, Senator, let me ask you about, we'll take Maine because there's a divide. If you look at the map and the areas that Joe Biden won, the areas that Donald Trump won, you can draw a blue line up the coastline, and that's where Biden fared best and Donald Trump fared best more inland. I'm curious. We've seen what Mitch McConnell is doing in Kentucky. He's spending some of his own campaign money trying to get the message out to people in his state to get those vaccination rates higher. Maine doing much better than Kentucky, obviously. But since you really understand this red-blue divide so well, because there is a very clear divide in the state of Maine, what are you thinking about doing? What would you recommend other people do to get the message out to areas that may not be as apt to go ahead and do what's best for them, do what's best for their families, do what's best for their children, do what's best for their businesses, do what's best for small family businesses, and get that vaccine?
Well, let me refer back to one of your commentators earlier this morning. I think it was Mr. Lewis, and he was talking about the Trump phenomenon as being a kind of a tribe. And I know that's true. I mean, I've seen it. And I think one of the interesting things he didn't mention, one of the things you see when you're in Trump country is flags. Well, throughout history, flags have sort of represented your community, your country, and you see these Trump flags. He's the guy that could help us. He could save 50,000 lives if he did a PSA, if he did what Mitch McConnell's doing nationwide and said, look, I've had the vaccination, I've had COVID, it's no fun, I've had the vaccination, no side effects. So, forget about all of this stuff the disinformation you're getting, and get vaccinated. I can try to do that, but he's the guy that could really do this if he would just step up and do something good for the country. He could do it right now, and it would be probably the most important thing that we could do to forestall the resurgence of the virus would be if he gave permission or encouragement to his followers that, this isn't he could take credit, say, look, this is my vaccine, whatever works. And that would really probably make more difference than anything else. Otherwise, now it's considered a kind of part of part of being in the club. You don't get vaccinated in the federal government and all that kind of thing. So if he would do what Mitch is doing, it could save lives in this country.
Senator King, good morning. It's Jonathan Lemire. I wanted to shift gears and ask you about the infrastructure deal, which now seems like it is on track. An agreement yesterday on the bipartisan portion of this. Wanted to get your reaction Two things. First, that part of it. Do you like what you've seen in the bill? Or were you concerned about stuff that may be in it or needs to be restored to it? And then secondly, the second piece of this, of course, is going to be the reconciliation bill, which is a $3.5 trillion or so is the number being floated around now. Where do you stand on that? How big do you think it should be? Is there a number at which you would no longer be comfortable?
Well, I'm not ready to say 3.5, 3.4, 2.7, 4.5. Bernie Sanders thinks it should be 6, by the way. So, there's room for discussion there. I think the bill, as I've seen it, the reconciliation bill, the proposed one, is important and will do incredible things for the country. But let me talk about what happened last night. We got 67 votes. It's hard to get 67 votes in the U.S. Senate for what time it is, let alone a major better than $500 billion infrastructure investment. The biggest investment in water, in highways, in basic infrastructure, bridges, rail, that's in 50 years. And I had to think, I'm glad you asked about both bills, because I had a thought last night that really hadn't occurred to me. The two most effective economic development projects of the late 20th century were the interstate highway system and the GI Bill. Those, and one you'd call hard infrastructure, the other you'd call soft infrastructure, but those were the things that really propelled the American economy to the great surge that we had in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So what we're really talking about is that kind of investment. I was excited because I've worked on developing this bill. It's been tough. The negotiators, the president deserve a lot of credit for just good old perseverance. It was a slog, and Rob Portman, Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, Susan Collins, all those people that have worked on it, others deserve a lot of credit. And I got to say, the other thing was the White House got its hands dirty on this, and by that I mean they really worked it. This wasn't, oh, you guys go do an infrastructure bill and then we'll see what happens. The president was directly involved, calling senators. The White House staff was intimately involved. I think Rob Portman spent 4 or 5 hours at the White House day before yesterday. That's the way these things get done. And presidential leadership makes all the difference. So I'm fired up. I think I got to say one thing about broadband. Broadband is the rural electrification of the 21st century. It's the single most transformative piece of the bill, in my view, a huge investment that will essentially connect the whole country. And we've had areas of the country that either can't afford it or just can't get connected at all, that have been left out of the development of the 21st century economy. That's the piece that I've been working on that I'm really excited about. Now with a lot more steps, we just got to get it across the finish line. So
now to this topic, which I know from the Intel Committee you'll have something to share with us about. A new executive order looks to combat the rising number of cyber attacks targeting America's critical infrastructure. And President Biden signed the order yesterday, just one day after warning that these attacks could lead to a, quote, real shooting war. The order includes measures requiring companies to meet a set of security standards, like encrypting data and requiring two-factor authentication. But the White House is limited in what further action it can take with so much of America's infrastructure run by private companies. So with that, a lot of this is voluntary, and there's goals that are being set in this executive order. What are the challenges that our country is facing in terms of cyber warfare? And what other options do we have in protecting ourselves?
Well, Mika, the first thing we have to sort of change our point of view. We have to reimagine conflict. Historically, conflict and wars have been between armies and battleships and navies and air forces and bombers. Now, conflict will focus on the private sector. The target space, 85% of the target space in cyber is in the private sector. So we have to rethink the relationship between particularly the critical infrastructure, the grid, financial transactions, the pipeline system, water systems, all of those things. We have to rethink the relationship between them and the federal government, because if the attack comes, it's going to be on, the California grid or the Northeast grid or the Texas grid. It's not going to be a missile landing in New York. And so the president's order is really important. By coincidence, and I don't think you knew this, or if you did, you're pretty prescient. Mike Rounds and Ben Sass and I introduced a bill yesterday, we didn't know the executive order was coming, on designating critical infrastructure and beginning the process of a relationship between those entities and the federal government that will have burdens and benefits. They're going to have to get their act together, meet standards, report incidents, and then the federal government, perhaps, I think we ought to give them some liability protection if they meet the standards, and we also ought to share the resources of the federal government to help them fight off these attacks. So the order yesterday was really important, coupled with the president's work in the last month on letting Russia know that we're not going to tolerate this anymore, and that this is serious business. There's going to be a response, because that's been a missing piece in America's cyber policy.
Senator Angus King, thank you very much for being on with us.
Yeah, and Senator, let me just say, speaking of Maine, when we were able to see you and your wife in Maine, I just want to tell you, you gave us a gift that just keeps on giving. Mika listens to the Andy Gibb album every night. So
I have a record player, and I appreciate it. Shadow dancing. All right. Angus King.
Thank you.
Thank you.